Welcome to the War Room. It's Tuesday, July the 21st, the year of our Lord 2020, episode 291 of War Room Pandemic, broadcasting from a boiling Washington, D.C. on America's Voice.news, on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Newsmax, and on G News and GTV, blown through the CCP's firewall and subtitled in Mandarin. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam in studio. Over to Stephen K. Bannon.
What's the? It looks like a Washington D.C. July there, Raheem. Is it? Looks like in the mid 90s, high 90s. A lot of humidity in Washington D.C.
It is the high 90s, if not breaking into the hundreds on the old humidity and all that. It is grotesque. I walked from the studio over to my office, about 120-second walk maximum yesterday, just fully covered in sweat. Just fully, I gained 10 pounds just in water weight, dragging myself along, Steve.
Well, we've got a DC summer. I think today kicks off also the president's now going to engage, I think, daily in not just briefings but being briefed. Do we have Kaylee's comments this morning on Fox and Friends teed up?
Yeah, let's roll it.
American people will it be
hear.
at the same time every day, and will he take questions?
Yeah, it'll usually be in the 5 or 6 p.m. hour. It may be daily. It will be most days, maybe not all days. But he said to me this morning, he does generally plan on taking questions at.
Steve?
Yeah, listen, I think the thing that we've argued for is that, you get briefed by Fauci, you get briefed by Redfield, you get briefed by Dr. Birx. Also, we think, Vice President Mark Meadows, get some small team, get fully briefed. And then if you want to every other day give the press, give the media an update on what the action they're taking, and give them some sense and put it in context of where we're going directionally with the pandemic. I think it's going to be very positive. I think, as we said before, when he was fully engaged in this and taking bold action, the approval ratings were 51%. Now not that he disengaged, but at least it didn't seem like it was being messaged or put forward what actions they were taking on a daily basis. It's tended to drop off, and I think he's got to stay away from, and would highly recommend staying away from, these longer press conferences where you're just allowing the press to ask questions that are not on topic. I think you got to stick with the pandemic. You obviously got to stick with the economic inferno we're in, etc. I'd like to have your guys' thoughts. So today we kind of kick off a new phase in this pandemic where the president's going to be really, I think, on top of this on a daily basis and then communicating directly to the American people what's going on.
Well, Steve, I think it's really important that the president take back the narrative from the media. And we've said from day one, I think the most important thing that he can do is go out there and talk about the specific risk factors concerning specific groups. And I'm particularly talking about children. As we're watching our European peers prepare to reopen their schools, as we're watching the Asian schools reopen, the only place in the civilized world where we want to keep these schools shut down is here in the United States. And I think it's highly politically motivated. And I think it would be beneficial for the American people, particularly the moms out there, to understand what the real risks are for their children, because they are largely benign. So I think that's one of the key things he has to do. And I'll say it again, if you're going to have the press conference at 5, be there at 5. And if you're going to have it at 6, be there at 6. But I think taking back the narrative is really, really key, Steve. And I think we can do it just with the facts.
Well, I hope he does it. I hope he gets some of the experts. I think that, Raheem, I'd like to have your ideas on this. I think it's very important in the first couple. I don't know if he goes in the Rose Garden, how he does it, but I think Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx. Remember, we've been talking about this on the show and doing interviews on in other media. It's not just briefing the press. It's really the president getting directly from Fauci, directly from Birx. And one of the reasons, Dr. Fauci's been out giving other interviews, and you hear all this kind of commentary from him, and you sit there and go, wow, did he tell anybody that? Is this the first time I'm hearing it? Has he been presenting that up the chain of command? And I think it's very important for President Trump. This is going to be the team, and I realize a lot of folks that listen to and watch the show are not exactly Fauci fans, but Fauci's on the team until he's not on the team. If he's going to be on the team, it seems to me you ought to the president says he's part of his team, you ought to embrace him and at least get, and force him, I think, to talk from data, to talk from science, to talk from analytics, and to be able to give the best recommendations he can, and then have the president contextualize that. So I think today it's not just briefing the press. The key part of it, I think, is making sure you're getting directly from the principals and not I don't want to say backbenchers, exactly what's going on, so the president can formulate his policies. And then Jack, he can talk about the school opening. I take a quite different view of this virus, and I take a view of this virus. And Jack, I don't want to say you were one of the guys saying it was going to go away in the summer, because I don't remember you specifically saying that. And if I could remember it, I would definitely play it every day on the show. But I think this virus is impervious to a lot of what people said. It's impervious clearly to heat and humidity. And that was the big discussion. If you read the New York Times, to me, the underpinning of that was that people made a catastrophic misread, and that was that this thing was going to go away with the summer months. In fact, it hasn't gone away with the summer months. In fact, it's accelerated in a first wave surge. I just don't think we know enough about this virus. I'll get to that in a second about the CCP, but I just don't think we know enough about this virus that if kids get it, what's the long-term implications? People say, oh, you get antibodies and then you don't, and it's like having the measles and then it's not. Well, we're in the first 6 months of this virus. We have no earthly idea, I don't think, what this virus is going to do to people long term. I think we're at the very early stages of understanding it. Raheem, what are your thoughts or observations on today's development, where the president's going to re-engage, at least on a daily basis, in driving the action on the pandemic?
Well, I just want to reiterate something that you just said there, Steve, which is very concerning. We have seen studies coming out of the United Kingdom, coming out of Europe as well in the last couple of weeks, that do talk about the long-term implications that this disease may have, implications on the brain, implications perhaps with strokes and seizures, long-term implications on the lungs. So there is all of that as well, and we've got to keep a keen eye on that. Can't just dismiss it as the kids don't get it and therefore we don't have anything to worry about in the future. There will most likely be something underlying here that we need to keep our eyes on. In terms of how the president presents today, firstly, I think it is a great credit to him and his team that they realized that they needed to bring these press conferences back. They realized that the public actually found so much trust in watching the president up there delivering the message from the administration every single day about what was going on. And yes, being able to hear whether it's Dr. Fauci, or whether it's Dr. Birx, whether it is the Surgeon General, whether it's Redfield, for having the multitude of voices from the administration coming in the back of the president and confirming what he's saying and backing up what he's saying. But I'd like to see a different step now, and I wonder what your guys' thoughts are on this. Instead of the Rose Garden, instead of the White House press briefing room, I would like to see him use the Oval Office and the power of the Resolute desk to sit behind that desk, to have another person there with him, to have a chart maybe printed up on an easel next to him, be able to walk the media through in that room with the power of that room, with everything that room connotes, and tell the press exactly what's going on. Steve and Jack?
Yeah, I'd like to, Jack, let me jump in first, and I want to hear your thoughts, is that I think this absolutely nails it. Remember back, and it was Jason, our colleague at the time, to help us conceive of this concept of the wartime president. When the president stepped into these decisions and kind of owned the decisions and had Dr. Fauci and Redfield and others come up and contextualize them, like I said, his approval rating was 51%. You've had the biggest increase percentage-wise in the history of this New York Stock Exchange, the market, over the last quarter, the second quarter of this year that ended June 30th. Percentage increase, and his overall polls, I think, dropped 8 or 10 points. He's dropped from 51 to 36 to 34% on approval for the pandemic, because it looks like a little bit of disengagement, and particularly the messaging of that on a daily basis. So yeah, I think this goes back, but it's got to be highly disciplined. I 100% agree with you. That's what I think is so important. It's seeing the president being briefed, right? Being briefed by these experts, making decisions, talking to the experts, and then bring the press in every day or every other day, and talk about the actions you've taken, talk about what the administration is doing. I love the idea of bringing up a chart or two, but make it a real working session. This shouldn't be, I don't think the Rose Garden or the briefing room is the place to do it. Make this a real working session where the media is allowed in, the country is essentially allowed in to see this as part of the job of this kind of action, urgency, and focus. Jack, what are your thoughts?
I'm in agreement, Steve. And again, as I've always said, I think the more clarity that people can get, the better. Somebody was complaining to me the other day, and I kind of agree with it. This throwing up one chart after another, particularly when these charts are so random and they change every day, I think they really should avoid that. I think they really should use their own intellect and explain some of these complex concepts to the American people, but do it using data. And I think if they want to hold up an academic paper or something like that to justify what they're speaking about and then reference that so that the media and the public can go take a look at it, I think that's good. But I think we've made a big mistake by relying on these charts from Washington University, et cetera, that really, they're not definitive enough. They don't really have a clear enough data point for people to follow.
I don't know if I blame the look, there's a lot of ways you can present data. I don't know if I blame the charts the charts or the way the data or the modeling or stuff is presented, and then the way you verbally present it. Having done 10 million presentations like that in my life, I know how you have to organize data to make sure that you can get the best decision possible, right, by decision makers, by making sure they have the best grasp of what's going on. I agree with you in the audience 100%. The way it was done before, I thought the charts were kind of randomly thrown up and not particularly walked through. If you're going to put a chart up, you ought to walk through just like you're walking the president through in describing it. So hopefully this thing gets a lot sharper and a lot better. But I definitely think you ought to have the team in there. The one thing I want to go to, how much time do we have left, Raheem? I want to make sure I get time because you've got a breaking story on the Lincoln Project about the CCP and some other CCP things I want to get to in the next segment.
We had 2.5 minutes. We now have 2 minutes.
Do we still have time to play bars? Oh, fine. What I want to do then is play bars. Let's go to, I want to go to Bill Barr, his opening. I want to go to the opening that the first poll we had from the other day on the Attorney General.
You want to talk about the raid in the United States, or you want to talk about the economic blitzkrieg?
Yeah, the economic blitzkrieg.
All right, let's roll clip 3, AVN.
The People's Republic of China is now engaged in an economic blitzkrieg, an aggressive, orchestrated, whole of government, indeed whole of society campaign to seize the commanding heights of the global economy and to surpass the United States as the world's preeminent technological superpower.
Steve.
Look, this is pretty succinct coming from a guy like Bill Barr, and we're going to get into some more that he said, but I want to contextualize this in, if you put the president's tweet up from last night on the screen, if the AVN guys have it, this is the beauty of...
Too many Goya beans, man, I'm telling you.
You see, they agree with me. This is the beauty of doing this doing it in an active harbor.
Live. This is how you know the show is live.
We actually come in... Yeah, we actually do this. Get a better signal. This is where we pull in. No, this goes back to the president put up last night a tweet that had the mask on. A lot of people in the Republican Party were very happy about that. Obviously, the president's now fully engaged in the whole concept of mask. But he had a comment in there he called it we're all united around fighting this invisible Chinese virus.
Okay, we'll get back to more of that. We're going to go to a quick break here. Pay some bills. War and Pandemic returns. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon. Be right back.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. It's Tuesday, July the 21st, the year of our Lord 2020. You're live on Capitol Hill with Jack Maxey and Raheem Kassam. No more Greg Manns. If you missed yesterday's show, Greg Manns moves over to the campaign with Jason Miller. Over now to Stephen K. Bannon.
Look, in this time of economic turbulence, and we're going to have at the bottom of the hour Curtis Ellis on here to talk about this $1 trillion to $3 trillion stimulus bill or relief bill that's packages up on Capitol Hill. These are extraordinary times when you're talking about the lower end of a relief package will be another $1 trillion. The folks that are going to see us through this are entrepreneurs. They're going to be at the vanguard of the turnaround. If you're an entrepreneur, you need every tool in the toolbox. And the most important tool that you need is NetSuite by Oracle. It's a software package that pulls it all together. Go today to netsuite.com/Bannon, Bannon, to get your 7 action steps every entrepreneur should be taking. Back to you, Raheem.
Well, Steve, where did you want to go with this now? Because I really love that clip of the Attorney General talking about.
Let's make sure.
Go ahead.
Well, I think what I'd like to do is make sure we got the tweet up with the president that said we're all united in combating the invisible Chinese virus. I think this is very important. This pandemic, and even if you're a pandemic truther, right? The Jack Maxey posse, or as they call themselves, the voice of reason. The voice of reason. And for the voice of reason, by the way, they're still lighting me up about Fauci being in the room. His approval rating 75%. He's on the president teams. He's not going anywhere. My point is, if the media loves him, let's have a Dr. Fauci suppository every day for CNN. Embrace Dr. Fauci, but make Dr. Fauci give you a real report. Make him give data. Make him give analytics.
Yeah.
And report that back. No more. Don't let Dr. Fauci go. Don't limit his media, but don't let him just wander around and be a pundit. One day says one thing and another day says something else. Wrangle. Let's do some wrangling on Dr. Fauci and some of the other guys in this team and make sure everybody's pulling the same direction. My point on this, though, is that, look, Nancy Pelosi didn't cause this. Minority Leader McCarthy didn't cause it. Joe Biden didn't. The President of the United States didn't. This was caused by the Chinese Communist Party. It's time we stop playing games. If the president's going to tweet that we're united in combating the invisible China virus, I would call it the visible CCP virus. It's visible because it's visible all around you. You're not going to be seeing high school football. Kids are either not going to go back to school. If they're going to go back to school, it's going to be some truncated manner. Right. Our entire cultural life is upside down. The American way of life is upside down. Our economy, the economic inferno is still burning. We've blown up the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve. All of that had to be done, right, to get us through this. But get us through what? To get us through it is what the Chinese Communist Party caused. Now, if it didn't come from a bioweapons program or if it didn't come from their lab, it still came from their decision-making. Their decision-making to hide this and to lie to everybody about it. We have numerous studies out there led by Southampton University in England that says 95% of the deaths, 95% of the destruction, starting with the innocent Chinese people, would have all been avoided if these devils had just done what any responsible government or any responsible human beings would have done. And that is tell the world we have a problem and we seek your help to solve it. They didn't do that. They covered it up and they lied about it. And then they exacerbated it. They made sure that innocent Chinese people flew all over the world when they didn't let them know that, hey, we should restrict travel. They vacuumed up the PPE to make sure that they would be even harder in places like Italy, that the gating event was going to be protective equipment for people who both test for the virus and those who care in the ICU units. What they've done is incomprehensible to decent people. And here's why. They're not decent. The leadership of the Chinese Communist Party are among the worst dictators in history. It's time we stop playing games. Secretary of State Pompeo was on TV, I think it was last week, in the Bill Hemmer interview, and he's talking about, people are starting to negotiate, or they're starting to call for the CCP to release all the information, all the data about the origins of this virus. Yes. It's time to stop asking. We're not a supplicant, and the American people in this great republic cannot be supplicants, cannot be a tributary state to an evil dictatorship like this. It's time to demand. It's time to demand on the behalf of the Chinese people. It's time to demand for the American people. And most importantly, it's to demand for humankind, for mankind. This is outrageous what they've done. It's outrageous how they're trying to change the conversation today. Their behavior is beyond reproach. And so an action step to me that has to happen immediately should be that the President of the United States demand, give them 72 hours. 72 hours, you open up to an international consortium, and the World Health Organization will be part of that, but they can't lead it. It's got to be led by the best scientists in Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, India, Europe, Canada, the United States, Africa, Latin America. The finest virologists, the finest epidemiologists in the world have to have full access to Wuhan, have to have full access to all the P3 labs. Without a question, 72 hours. If you do not do this in 72 hours, if you are not prepared to have the flights come in and have us have full access to every technician, every doctor, to look at every gain of function experiment, to go through every lab, to look at every specimen, and to look at the genetic code of everything that was done. If you're not prepared to do that, they should be immediately in Hong Kong cut off. We should break the convertibility of the Hong Kong dollar, cut off the regime's access to the U.S. dollar, then sanction their 5 largest financial institutions: Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, Bank of China, CITIC, Penang Group Financial, and others, and also start to sanction the senior leadership, not the mid-level people in Hong Kong. Go right to the top, because of their lying about this virus. Go right to the top, and when I say the top, I mean Wan Qishan, President Xi, and the rest of his henchmen. And then, besides sanctioning them, start to seize their assets in the United States and in the United Kingdom. These people are, you think they dwarf in wealth the people in Kuwait and Bahrain, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. The Gulf Emirates are nothing compared to the families that control the Chinese Communist Party. Their assets should be seized immediately in places like New York City and London. This is the only thing they understand is smash mouth. This is what they've done to the West. This is what they've done to the United States. Much of the conversation we're having right now is all marginalia. It's not getting to the heart of the problem. Part of getting to the heart of the problem is what you saw FBI Director Wray, Attorney General Barr, National Security Advisor O'Brien, and the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo as they're laying out the action steps of a fully integrated, essentially war plan against the Chinese Communist Party for technology, an information war, and economic war. And you've seen Secretary Esper and the Joint Chiefs of Staff with the carrier battle groups now in the South China Sea and the Straits of Taiwan, other military actions. You've seen our allies in the United Kingdom talk about forward deploying Her Majesty's ship Queen Elizabeth, this new brilliant aircraft carrier and a carrier battle group, to Singapore or the South China Sea. You've seen Australia. You've seen Japan. Japan's talking about 30 submarines to add to this alliance. You see on Chinese-occupied Tibet, where the Indian army under the leadership of President Modi is leading India to not back down to the Chinese Communist Party. Throughout the world, this is happening. But now it's time to face facts on this pandemic. They caused it. Okay? Democrats didn't cause it. Republicans didn't cause it. The Chinese Communist Party caused it. And now it's time to hold them accountable. Every day that goes by, it's just another day that they think they've got a victory. And if you think this is the last we're going to see of this, you're kidding themselves. They're sitting there and they're laughing at us right now. They're laughing at us. They think they have us on our back foot. They think they have us where we're at each other's throats. It's time to put that all aside and focus on the enemy. Remember, how we handle this pandemic is the other side of the coin of what Barr and Mike Pompeo are doing. And it's time for us to focus on the enemy of the Chinese people, the enemy of the American people. The enemy of mankind is the senior leadership of the Chinese Communist Party and what the Chinese Communist Party represents and what it does in China and throughout the world. It's time for us to now take that on. Gentlemen, observations, comments.
Steve, you know how you talk about 72 hours for them to come clean? The World Health Organization sent a team there last week to start negotiations. Of course, the Chinese government put them all into isolation and quarantine, and the London Times quotes Michael Ryan, the head of Health Emergencies Program at the World Health Organization, saying that putting together a multinational team and bringing it to China will now take weeks, if not a month, to get it done because of all of the roadblocks that are being put into it. Now, he doesn't describe it that way. He talks about the difficulties of social distancing and quarantining and working remotely. But they are slow walking this process.
This is what I'm saying. Hold on. But Jack, this is what I'm saying about no more games.
Agreed.
This is a joke. We don't need the World Health Organization over there. World Health Organization is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Chinese Communist Party. And the guy Ryan is as bad as they come. We don't need the likes of those over there that's going to represent the people of the United States of America. That is outrageous. The World Health Organization is already owned. It's the World Health Organization that helped get us in this mess. They're the ones that either were complicit or didn't have the smarts to do their fiduciary responsibility to individually check when the Taiwanese told them on the 31st of December of 2019 that there was human-to-human transmission.
Yep.
Then they took the lies of the Chinese Communist Party or were complicit in coming out with this press release in the tweet on the 12th, 13th, and 14th of January, said there was no human-to-human transmissions. Taiwan told them the truth. The World Health Organization doubled down on the lie of the Chinese Communist Party. It's the reason this inferno started in Hubei.
Steve, we got to jump to a break here. And there is other breaking news around the world as well. The European Union reaching its new coronavirus recovery deal. We'll be talking to our guest, Curtis Ellis, about the pandemic stimulus bill here in the United States as we come back with more War Room Pandemic. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon return after this short break.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Well, a new UK government report that's out today as well showing there was no Russian interference in the Brexit vote, and now the headlines are reading, "You didn't look hard enough." More coming out from a War Room Pandemic in the next couple of hours. Tuesday, July 21st, the year of our Lord 2020. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam here in the War Room. Stephen K. Bannon, our guest, Curtis Ellis in this segment. Over to you, Stephen K. Bannon.
We're going to have Curtis Ellis on here to explain this. The relief package is up on Capitol Hill, but as Raheem just said, and we'll get into this segment, there's over, I think, $1 trillion relief package in the EU. What does this mean? It means we're in an economic inferno and people are trying to find their way through it. The vanguard of doing that, people that seize opportunity, that seize the day, are going to be entrepreneurs. If you're an entrepreneur, you need NetSuite by Oracle. That's the tool that'll take you to the next level. If your business is $1 million to $100 million, you need NetSuite by Oracle. Go to netsuite.com/Bannon, Bannon, today to get your 7 action steps every entrepreneur should be taking. That's netsuite.com/Bannon. Now I want to bring in Curtis Ellis. Curtis, you just, hopefully you heard my tirade against the Chinese Communist Party. People may not know this, but it was Curtis Ellis and Peter Navarro that were very early on in the Trump movement. There were two guys who knew exactly what had to happen. Economic nationalism. This was what was going to make America great again. This is what I said the first day I took over the campaign. If Hillary Clinton wants to talk identity politics, we talk economic nationalism, we will beat her. I don't care if we're 12, 14, 16 points down. We will defeat her. Now you got Joe Biden from Wilmington, Delaware. Curtis, he's going to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and he's trying to recast himself. He's basically taking clips from Curtis Ellis writing and Peter Navarro's television appearances. They're cut and pasting them. He's trying to reposition himself as a populist and economic nationalist. Before I ask you about this bill that's up there and how you formulate this, how you brand it, Curtis, I want to ask you about my tirade on the Chinese Communist Party, and particularly given what they've done to the world, given what they've done to their people regarding this virus and how they've hid the information, how they've lied to people, how they've made decisions that have destroyed lives, property, economic well-being, and communities. How easy is it going to be to really take back the supply chain? We tell back, hey, bringing back the medical supply chain, bringing back the manufacturing supply chain. When you actually got to put that into action, how tough is it going to be, particularly when the corporatists that Joe Biden represents from Wilmington, Delaware, and the Wall Street faction is going to fight you every step of the way because their business model is predicated upon slave labor in China?
Well, exactly right. It took 40 years to get into the mess that we're in, and that's a conservative estimate. It might be 70 years to get into this. It's been the policy of Washington since World War II, since the end of World War II, to integrate our economy with this concept of a global economy, to merge our economy with the rest of the world. China is simply the last iteration of that. And for the last 40 years, we have been merging our economy with China's slave labor economy. So it's going to take a while to get out of this, and it's going to be a huge challenge. You see in the New York Times today a story about the administration has now placed more Chinese companies on the sanctions list because of the slave labor, the use of slave labor in Xinjiang. Now, these companies are suppliers to the giant corporations of America: Apple, General Motors, The Gap, Nike, outfits like that. In fact, in this New York Times story, they describe how Tim Cook had his picture taken at one of these slave markets in China, saying, "Oh, I want to see the excellent work they're doing here." I mean, this is amazing. So do you think Apple is going to take this lightly? No. We have to turn this into a moral crusade. We have to have a whole of society approach to call out, not just to call out and confront the Chinese Communist Party, but it's up to each one of us that we cannot be complicit and enablers of this type of slave labor. And this brings us to how we can tie it to the pandemic and tie it to the George Floyd protests. If you're gonna worry about endemic slavery in America, and America was built on slavery, this global economy is built on slavery. America has done more for the rights of workers and to make a fair and equitable deal for its people than anybody else in the world. Cut loose these slave markets, whether in China, Mauritania, Malaysia, or wherever. Bring those jobs back home where people are paid a decent wage and have the right to ask for higher wages and better working conditions, which is more than they have in most of the rest of the world.
So Curtis, why don't you position for us right now what's happening on Capitol Hill?
Well, we see that there's now talking about the next level of stimulus, the next Economic Recovery Act. I say that the frame, how we look at what this bill is about, is as important, perhaps more important than the particulars that are in it. We have to position this bill as a way to re-engineer the economy so we are not vulnerable to the predations of the Chinese Communist Party. Whether you're talking about a payroll tax cut, other tax incentives should be pitched as a way to reshore jobs, to build those supply chains back here. One aspect I particularly like is the idea of giving temporary subsidy to COBRA. That is, so people who've been laid off can keep their employer-provided health insurance. The same way we wanted people to stay on the payroll through the Payroll Protection Act, stay on private payrolls instead of going on welfare rolls, let's keep people on the private health insurance rolls rather than going on Medicaid. It's going to save money in the long run. And as I was saying, the payroll tax cut should be used as and explained as an incentive to employ more Americans. This is going to be something that President Trump has asked for, the payroll tax cut. That's going to be a big bone of contention. The Democrats are going to be asking for state and aid to the state and local localities to make up these budget deficits. I say, if you're going to do that, well, let's keep people on the private health insurance rolls rather than putting them on state Medicaid rolls where you're going to have to bail them out later. This whole thing, we have to stop treating this as aid for a sick patient and look at it as re-engineering our economy toward national self-reliance. When we start hiring Americans again, that will solve so many problems, including what people have been protesting about after
Curtis, Curtis, where's my Buy American? Where's my Hire American EOs? Are they trying to tuck these into this bill? And if are, where are they? Where can the American people who voted for economic nationalism, how can they get some sense that it's either that all this money is being spent? You're talking about the bid and the ask on this thing is $1 trillion to $3 trillion. These are numbers that are mind-boggling. If you thought about them, before January 21st of this year, when the pandemic came here. But how do people, particularly Trump supporters, supposed to get some level of comfort that something's actually being done on the Buy American and Hire American program? Because Certainly, there hasn't been any executive orders signed, and what we continue to hear is talk about the stock market. I reiterate again, the stock market had the greatest increase percentage-wise in its history in the second quarter of this year, and President Trump dropped 8 points in the polls. There, in this time of a pandemic, in this time of an economic crisis, there's no correlation between a rising stock market and where people think you're on top of this crisis.
Well, exactly right. Look, the base of Trump's support is small businesses. This bill has to do something for small business, whether it's a moratorium on debt collection against small business. You have to reward your base. That is the first principle of politics. And small business is the friend of President Trump and of the economic nationalist movement. The big corporations aren't. They're globalists. They'd like to see small business eliminated entirely. We've got to do something to protect our base, reinvigorate the small towns, reinvigorate the rural areas. That's what this is about. That's what it should be about. And unfortunately, you're too right. You are right. Where are these executive orders? Where's the national self-reliance in pharmaceuticals executive order? Why is that being held up? This has got to move. You keep saying action, action, action. It's got to be the right action, and that is precisely the right action we need to see to give people the assurance that voting for President Trump got them what they wanted, what they voted for. And that's how he's going to get voted in again. You've got to deliver for the people that stand behind you.
Curtis, how do people get access to your Twitter feed and to your into all your endeavors? You're at America First Policies. You're the policy director. How can people get more access to you?
You'll find everything I write archived on the website, americafirstpolicies.org, americafirstpolicies.org, and you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Curtis W. Ellis, and you'll find America First Policies on Twitter as well.
Okay, Curtis, thank you very much. You're a patriot and one of the thought leaders in the Trump movement. Jack and Raheem, I know we only got a few minutes, but I want to know what your thoughts are as this is a huge battle up on Capitol Hill. One of the things I found disturbing this morning in Politico's playbook, if you look at it, they said Secretary Mnuchin and Mark Meadows are going to lead the fight, but that the Republican Senate was almost completely ignoring everything that the White House thought was a priority. I'd like to know your guys' thoughts and ideas on this.
Jack?
Oh, well, Steve, I think that one of the things that Curtis said, which is really, really important, and one of our viewers remarked about it, this idea of these multinational corporations and the complicit members of our legislature who have allowed this to occur have kind of made us all complicit in the crime. And she said the secret to, her name is Annie Nelson. She's a listener. She says the secret to China's success can be explained by Upton Sinclair when he says, it is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends upon not understanding it. So I think what she's really trying to say is we've been living under this kind of willful blindness where China is concerned, willing to take the profits without opening our eyes to the humanitarian crimes that are occurring in that regime every single day. And I applaud Curtis for remarking about it because I think the American people need to start being offended that we are being used, that our good character and our good morality is being used by the people who are allowing this to continue. Raheem?
Yeah.
Raheem, along those lines, I don't know how the New York Times published the story today about all the woke companies, Apple and Nike in particular, that are living off of slave labor in China, right? These woke corporations are there lecturing the deplorables every day about their foibles and their shortcomings and how racist they are. It turns out that they've been exposed now as profiting off of not forced labor, but slave labor in China.
Yeah, that's right. You have, I think it's Apple, Ralph Lauren, Google, Hewlett-Packard, Tommy Hilfiger, Hugo Boss, and Muji. This is according to a report that came out from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. That's a think tank established by the Australian government. This is. I mean, Steve, I want your take on this after the break. We've only got 20 seconds left here, but this is, to me, look, the New York Times talking about this stuff, and all these other guys who have taken the China Daily shilling talking about this stuff. And by the way, especially the New York Times on slavery, which we'll get into later on in the show, it doesn't ring true. I'm glad it's out there. Doesn't ring true. To hear it from them. We'll be right back. More War and Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back to the War Room. The New York Times pretending to be the doyen of everything anti-slavery and pro-human rights does not ring true. And the reason I said it before the break is you've got to check out the lead story on thenationalpulse.com. We went back and looked through some of the New York Times editorials about slavery and the black vote. Just note to Mr. Sulzberger, your paper called it the great crime that the Republican Party committed when giving blacks the right to vote. So just saying. You're back in the War Room. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam. Over to Stephen K. Bannon.
Yeah, we just, speaking of the New York Times thing, they just tweeted out that Nancy Pelosi said she wants a bill by the end of this week. When she talks about a bill, it's $3 trillion. The deficit already this year could be up to $5 trillion. They're talking about $6 to $9 trillion increase to the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve. My point, we're living in very uncertain economic times, and particularly the future. Gold's been on fire here lately, but if you want to get precious metals into your portfolio, particularly your IRA, you've got to go to the guys at Birch Gold. They're the number one people in the world about getting you access to how you actually own precious metals. Birch Gold are the guys. We're proud to have them as a sponsor. Raheem, give us exactly how our audience could get to them.
Cell phones, text Bannon, Bannon, to 474747. That's text Bannon to 474747. Steve?
Yeah, 474747. Those are lucky numbers. Make sure you go to the Birch Gold guys and talk to them about IRAs. They have precious metals, also about the ownership of gold. Remember, in uncertain times, you want to be in precious metals. These times are very uncertain. Now we're going to have Jack Posobiec, one of our guests. Jack, I've been railing on the Chinese Communist Party today. I know we got a lot to go through. Portland, Denver, Chicago, all of it. But before I do that, I want to get back to the source of our problems, ladies and gentlemen, is the Chinese Communist Party. Jack Posobiec, former naval intelligence officer, a speaker of Mandarin, a guy that knows China as well as anybody. Jack, why is there not more focus by the media? You had the New York Times story that Raheem was talking about they're now quoting a Australian Policy Institute expose about American companies using slave labor in China to make their goods. Why is there not more outrage right now? Why is the mainstream media looking the other way of the source of our problems in this pandemic, which is, like I said, not Pelosi, not Schumer, not McConnell, not McCarthy, not the president, not Biden. It's the Chinese Communist Party. Why do you think we do not every day focus on those guys?
Corporations are, again, falling into that corporate trap of idolizing the Chinese market. They view those 1.7 billion Chinese citizens, subjects actually of the Chinese regime, as a potential market that they can open up for themselves and for their own good. So keep in mind that many of these corporate media outlets are also owned by larger institutions, organizations that have a large market share or are trying to achieve a larger market share in China. They look at that Chinese market as a way to get in. They want to sell their goods in there. And so they think, well, if there's any way us just to do that, we've got to play along. This is, of course, Hollywood is the greatest example of this. Hollywood will say, we're not going to censor you, but if you make that film, we're not going to ever allow your shows, your movies, to be distributed in China again, period, full stop, end of story. So you've seen this with Disney, you've seen this with Marvel, you've seen the capitulation, you've seen the changeover, you've seen it with the studios, you've seen it with the actors. They immediately, when is the last time anyone in Hollywood talked about Tibet? Remember, Tibet used to be the number one thing that you'd hear from the left for years and years and years. They're actually quite good on this issue. Brad Pitt made a giant movie about it, and then suddenly it's gone, completely gone. And now his movies are being shown in China again.
You've had National Security Advisor O'Brien, you've had FBI Director Wray, you've had Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, and particularly had Bill Barr give these speeches over the last couple of weeks that laid out a strategy of our whole of government approach to really the confrontation and containment of the Chinese Communist Party. You've had the military with increased carrier battle group activity in the South China Sea. Our ally India is confronting the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, up in Chinese-occupied Tibet. You've seen now a real sea change here of the U.S. government in this confrontation. Jack, I know you were a naval intelligence officer. What's your observation of what the Trump doctrine is as you see it play out through these different department heads as they go about and now lay out for the American people exactly what they're going to do?
Well, Steve, the biggest difference that I would say that I've seen between the Trump administration, and I was actually in the Navy under the Obama administration, so I got to see that policy up front. Theirs was a policy of words. It was a policy of speeches, flowery language, pronouncements, six-party talks. None of it ever went anywhere. What the Trump administration is now doing, whether you like the president or not, but what they're doing is they're bringing military pressure and they're bringing economic pressure on China in ways that no administration prior has ever done before. And at the end of the day, this is going to come down to a money fight. We have to stop financing the PLA through our trade agreements. That's what we're doing. We are funding their rise. The Trump administration knows that. I think the American people, by and large, are understanding that, and they're understanding our economic link and our economic tie at the hip to China. So if we want to cut that off, we're going to cut them off and stem the rest of the tide that flows through it downstream, just like we're right now talking about downstream of the Three Gorges Dam.
Jack Maxey brought up earlier, Jack Posobiec, that the Times of London is reporting that the WHO was over there last week in Beijing, and they're negotiating, trying to get access to the records, trying to get access to the scientists, trying to get access to Wuhan, and it's not going very well. It could take months to do this. I've said, hey, we ought to give them 72 hours to give full access to an international consortium, not the WHO, but an international consortium made up of the best minds in the world, led by countries like India, the United States, England, Japan, etc. Give them 72 hours, and if they don't comply 100%, shut them off from the dollar, sanction their banks, sanction the senior members of the regime, seize their assets, particularly seize their assets in the United States and London. Do you think this is too harsh, or do you think that something's necessary?
Steve, this is the only thing that they're going to respond to at the end of the day. They don't care about their agreements with foreign institutions. They don't care. They have a word for foreigners.
Just hold your thought there. Jack, we're going to break. We're going to break here on War and Pandemic. Jack Maxey, Jack Posobiec, Stephen K. Bannon, Raheem Kassam. We'll be right back after this short break.